Hey guys, what's up? Week 463. Let's jump into the reviews for you. First up is one from Ivan Passer from Radiance Films. This is the 4K of the 1981 film here, Cutter's Way. And I've heard a lot about Cutter's Way. I actually think I had a Twilight Time Blu-ray on recommendation from listening to the Pure Cinema podcast. Brian Sauer always praised this movie. He was a huge champion of this one, and it always sounded really great. John Hurd, Jeff Bridges are the two kind of main leads in here. This is based off a book that was written, I believe, in probably the 70s, and it was adapted originally. It came out called Cutter and Bone, and it did really poorly. And then some critics kind of praised it a little bit. They got a re-release, Cutter's Way, and you know what? It really didn't find its audience exactly. And there's like 3 commentaries on here. Listen to all those. One of which was some of the filmmakers involved, and then we have Nick Redman from Twilight Time and another expert on the film, and we have another fan commentary, expert kind of commentary, and they do all kind of mention the idea that this movie probably would have done really well in the 70s. It definitely has that 70s kind of mindset, that post Vietnam kind of style attitude, that anger. And it fits really well with that kind of, vibe. Jeff Bridges is, I think, probably one of the best American actors of his time, if not all time. Once I think about him starting all the way back early, and his films were great, from The Last Picture Show all the way up to The Big Lebowski, he's always just been a top-notch presence. He kind of takes a back seat in this movie, as a lot of the commentators pointed out. He's not really like the star kind of like flashy role here, and that's in John Hurd. And John Hurd was a guy growing up in my time. You would have seen him as the dad in Home Alone or one of the guys in Chud. But he had other good roles throughout the 80s and things like that, like Cat People. He's got a really good role, a challenging role in that, and a kind of a complex, kind of messed up role in Cat People. Very good performance, very good actor. But I think that he's one of those all-time kind of great characters in this one. One of those characters that's what you would call a difficult person, a difficult man kind of persona, right? Where, although sometimes they are right, the way they go about things and the way they do things, it's never relaxed, never let anything slide. They're angry about what's happened to them in life, and they want to get back at society for what society's done, and all these people that are kind of running society in that kind of way, people that don't pay for the acts that they do. So essentially the plot is this. Jeff Bridges is kind of like a poor man's gigolo. He's a very handsome guy. He works at kind of like a boat, at a dock for a mutual friend of his and John Hurd's. And he kind of like lives with John Hurd and his wife, who's become an alcoholic due to John Hurd's like kind of abuse and just like struggle through life. And there's definitely some tension, like sexual tension between those two, and romance between him and Jeff Bridges and John Hurd's wife. And he kind of just moseys on through life. He kind of just walks away from every confrontation he has, doesn't want to take a side, all that kind of stuff like that. And one day, on the way home, at night, he sees kind of a body dropped, and he gets a decent look at the person, just sunglasses, and it ends up being a young girl. And through a parade, he points out that that's the guy, and it ends up being some big shot, JT. What is it? Ward? Not JT Ward is the actor. JT. There's a JT Walsh is the actor. JT. I can't think of his name. But he ends up being this real big shot kind of local guy that's involved, and it has somewhat of a connection with them. In fact, he kind of is the boss of their mutual friend George. So it kind of complex. It makes things very complicated when the sister of the deceased starts to kind of hang around John Hurd and Jeff Bridges, trying to convince them. And John Hurd's 100% into it to try to get this guy to admit that he murdered this cheerleader. And that's kind of the plot of the movie. There's a lot of emotional scenes. There's a lot of good dramatic scenes. There's a lot of kind of like just great character moments that John Hurd has. One day he comes home drunk and he smashes into this car, which is absolute insanity. And the way he plays it off with the police officer is great. I should mention that he's a Vietnam vet, and he has one eye, one arm, and one leg. So he's constantly stumbling around throughout the film. But he's that character, right? That character that has drive, and he has a lot less to lose than somebody like Jeff Bridges, but Jeff Bridges never takes really a stand. So I would say that the acting's phenomenal in this. The score is great, and the opening, like it's a very visually, it's pretty great looking. And I know that sounds like a dullard way to say it, but in the opening, there's like a rainy scene, and it's just the body gets dropped down in an alleyway, and you're like, oh, that's really effective the way they did that. Just like kind of dark and gritty, but the rest of the movie is shot pretty solid. It's not a flat movie or anything like that. The colors pop, and it's not also overly saturated, brightly colored movie. It looks very naturalistic and strong. I think the score is really great. They do mention kind of like a Western kind of tinge to the score to a certain extent. I can't remember. It definitely has a little flare out at the end. I feel maybe I'm just saying Western tinge towards the end because of the final climactic scenes. Pretty wild and pretty intense. But excellent movie with excellent performances. And there's a character in here, John Hurt. I don't know I wasn't too familiar with the actress. She didn't go on to do a bunch of movies, so I'm sure she was probably more of a theater actress. But she's really tremendous. She plays John Hurt's wife, and I can't think of her name in here. But she's got like this really complex and sad character that is very emotional, and I think that she has some of the best like kind of dialogue scenes in here and sad moments. And Jeff Bridges is kind of an aggravating character, even more so than John Hurt. It's one of those ones where John Hurt, you're like, Jesus Christ, man, come on. But then as you watch longer, you're like, oh, Jeff Bridges is just maybe even more aggravating and troublesome than John Hurt, to be honest. Was that those who do not take a stand are condemned to what is that, Dante's Inferno, or is that Paradise Lost? I think it's Paradise Lost or Dante's. I can't remember which, but those who never take a stand in life are doomed to purgatory, right? But whatever the saying goes, I'm sure Ken Coakley knows it and he'll correct me on that. So I also do want to mention the character of George. He's this kind of, they could have done him so differently, but the way they handle him, I think, was really, made him a sweet, good-natured guy that's a little torn on what's going on. I would recommend this. This looks fantastic in 4K, sounds fantastic. It's a great 70s movie made in 1981, if that makes any sense. But we do have some special features, of course. We have a new featurette featuring appreciations from crime writers Megan Abbott, Jordan Harper, and George Pelicanos. Option to watch with original titles, audio commentary, audio introduction by Jeff Bridges. Relatively short, but it's cool to hear Jeff Bridges, man. I doubt he says yes to every movie, every special Blu-ray. Introduction by Richard Tavernier. Archival interviews with cast and crew, featurette on composer Jack Nicky. Isolated score track, trailer, reversible sleeve featuring original and a newly commissioned artwork by Time Tomorrow. Limited edition bound booklet featuring new writings by Christina Newland, Nick Pickerton, and Travis Woods. Yeah, and there's also, we also have the commentaries here, archival commentaries and interviews. Like I said, there's 3 commentaries on here. I think Travis Woods is one of them, Nick Redmond's the other, and one is cast and crew. We also have a nice booklet in here, and great kind of presentation of this really well done movie. I think this is one that if you haven't seen, I think most people that are into 70s films or kind of downbeat movies or depressing Americana would really love this one. Cutter's Way, fantastic stuff. Like it a lot. Okay, the next one here is another 4K. This is an upgrade that has not had a 4K release from my understanding, and Arrow knocked it out of the park with this bad boy. 1979 classic TV horror film, Salem's Lot. Yeah, this has both editions. I don't think that the theatrical version has ever been released stateside except on VHS, and now it's finally on 4K, and we have the miniseries version as well. You can watch it in parts 1 and 2, or you can watch the whole thing as a feature. So we have like 3 of the versions, or pretty much all the versions of this movie on here, and it's loaded with tons of freaking features. Let me talk about Salem's Lot a little bit. This is one that I had heard about for years. I always knew what Salem's Lot was as a kid every time, but I didn't watch it until recent years. I don't know why. I've always liked Tobe Hooper, and this one is actually one of Tobe Hooper's best movies, I think. I'm a big fan of Texas Chainsaw, of course. Tobe Hooper directed this. He directed Texas Chainsaw 1 and 2, Funhouse, Poltergeist, a slew of classic horror films. Stephen King wrote this one. I think this might have been his second published feature-length novel, not written but published, would be Salem's Lot. And this is kind of the early and the Kingdom, right? He had that run. He had Carrie, as far as films are concerned, Carrie 76, Salem's Lot 79, The Shining 80, and then what we have, not including short films, we had Creepshow 82, and then 83 was the big year of King with Christine, Dead Zone, Cujo, as far as films are concerned, and he was writing all these stories. And Salem's Lot is a fantastic movie, especially when you take in consideration that it is a TV movie. Jeez Louise. I mean, Dark Knight of the Scarecrow, Salem's Lot, to me are like top echelon TV horror films. And this had to be told kind of in a miniseries because it's not just about a character or a vampire or a monster. It's about a whole town. It's about an evil house, too, which King would obviously go on to do in The Shining, right? He's obsessed with these objects being evil. So it's a Marsden house, right? Which is what brings this writer who grew up there at a young age. He had an experience in the house. Kind of reminds me of the Stand with Stanley gets trapped in the house in It, right? That kind of reminds me of that. But he had this experience in this house, this Marsden house, when he was young, and he's drawn back to come here as a writer and write about about this house, and he's kind of infatuated with it. But he's not the only one, because a couple antique dealers have moved in here, including James Mason playing Straker, and a guy named Barlow, Kurt Barlow, that they keep mentioning that no one quite sees, and he's eventually you do see him, and it's quite iconic, kind of look of him. He's the Nosferatu-style vampire, which was not like the novel, played by Reggie Nalder, who is a unique-looking individual, to say the least. It's definitely Mark of the Devil as albino, and of course Bird with the Crystal Plumage, and just tons of movies. So this is what happens. He moves in, and he starts to kind of focus on the house, and weird things start to happen almost immediately. And then he comes to the conclusion that an evil house attracts evil people. So people of Salem's Lot start to kind of disappear and be turned into bloodsuckers of the night. And it reminds me a little bit of like the Warlock story, right, where we have the kids coming back to get their brother and coming to get their friends at the window. It's just kind of a brilliant nice little touch on that. Really creepy stuff going on. The cast is phenomenal. The lead in here is, of course, from Starsky and Hutch, who I've seen that show, and it's not a show that I would watch numerous times. I did kind of in a passing TV 70s stuff that wasn't really my thing, but I think the lead does a pretty good performance here. I think what's the kid's name? Lance Kerwin, I think, is the kid's name, and he does a pretty solid performance too. And this is the one thing in the special features, and I've always been kind of interested in this character, so I always take note when they're there, the kind of nerdy whore kid, right? And you can see this character type in Tobe Hooper's Funhouse, and it's funny that he directed Salem's Lot, and this character is from the book too, from '79. But you're like, you know what? And Grady Hendrix talked about this in the special features. He was like, did King really invent that nerdy kind of heroic character? And you're thinking about all the movies before, and you're like, I really can't think of a horror kid before that, right? I mean, there's kids that are kind of like the forefront in horror films from the beginning, like Invaders from Mars, but that kid that's obsessed with horror movies, and it's such a prevalent theme in the 80s. And Salem's Lot might have been that kind of Kickstarter in the '79 with the kid being obsessed with magic and monsters and stuff, the Tom Savini, if you will, of the movie, and whatnot. So and I've got to think that King maybe possibly had seen interviews. Who knows when he actually wrote Salem's Lot, '75. So he probably didn't know who Savini was, really not on the map. But that's just that zeitgeist, right, of these horror monster kids. You see it in Funhouse, you see it in Deadly Spawn, you see it in Neon Maniacs, you see it in Friday the 13th Part 4. Numerous things in the 80s were this kind of horror kid. And I think that's Salem's Lot. He's kind of early on that. And Grady Hendrix was talking about that, and I was like, I was thinking the same thing when I was watching that. So that's, kind of, I guess, it's so obvious when you start seeing it and put it in that perspective. But again, I'm going through the cast here. Kenneth McMillan is the sheriff, is one of my favorite performances. A complete prick of a sheriff, but he's great. George Dzunga, I always say his name wrong, from The Deer Hunter, has a great role in here. Fred Willard has a small role. Bonnie Bedelia is in here, and a good kind of love interest character, a solid character. Ed Flanders from the William Peter Blatty movies has a great little role, and I'm sure, you can't forget, you can't forget one of the best, a guy who plays Mike Ryerson, Jeffrey Lewis, one of my favorite character actors, pops up in Double Impact, Devil's Rejects, Culpeper Cattle Company. So it's just got a tremendous cast, and they set up this small town really well in the runtime. Now, I don't feel like this movie is cut short. I could have watched another hour of it. This could be 4 hours, and I'd be completely fine with Salem's Lot. The small town is pretty well done, even though it isn't full screen, because even the theatrical version is, because it was a TV movie. What I noticed, one thing about here too, is how inspired Tobe Hooper was by Psycho. Of course, Texas Chainsaw is kind of the same style, a story of Ed Gein and stuff. But when you think, and this is again watching this one, I was like, man, the Marsden house is a lot like the Psycho house. Boom, the commentary says it. So it's so hard to not repeat what everybody else says. But so much like the Psycho house, and you're like, and they talk about the scenes where Hooper has the track he shot in Texas Chainsaw, and I was just thinking, man, Hooper's whole filmography is really just an obsession with the old dark house kind of movies, right? Like it's like, the Marsden house, the old dark house, and then we have Texas Chainsaw, kind of a scary house, and the fun house is the name and title. So it's like a lot of this is just a take on the old dark house. He must have been a big fan of that kind of creepy style deal there, and you don't really think that. Poltergeist as well is kind of a house of horrors. So very much in that you would put Tobe Hooper in that, his movies aren't generally haunted house movies, but they all have that aspect here. And again, last time I covered this movie, I'm sure I mentioned that, how much Fright Night lifted from this movie or was inspired, especially the staircase scene with James Mason is verbatim, the familiar, the kind of ghoul-like character that James Mason plays is very much like with the character in Fright Night who follows Jerry Dandridge around. And they're gate coded, just like these characters are gate coded. So it's like so many similarities. And again, Amanda Reyes and Bill Ackerman, they do a commentary on here, which is fantastic, and they talk about how well this kind of pushed forth, into the '80s, the vampire flick, and so does Grady Hendrix in the special features. Grady Hendrix is a horror writer as well. But yeah, just tons of great features. It looks fantastic. Again, we have the theatrical version, which is a rarity, and it runs about an hour and 50 minutes. A rarity for the stateside United States release. So it's together. Both are 4Ks, both presented, with HDR and whatnot. They has a commentary by Chris Alexander, a old editor of Fangoria. But there is the old classic commentary with Tobe Hooper also ported over. But tons of features on the Salem's Lot. The more I watch this, the more I like it. Of course, I do think the ending's a tiny bit hammy, just the way it's shot and done, but I still like it. I have no real issues with it. Got a nice booklet in here. But yeah, as far as the features are concerned, I just want to make sure I get everything. So we have a 4K, of course, distributed internationally. We have the 2-part miniseries and the shorter theatrical cut, distributed internationally 4K, presented in Dolby Vision. Both versions of the film, original lossless mono audio, optional subtitles, of course, reversible sleeve, collector's perfect bound booklet containing new writing on the film critics by film critic Shane Abley, Sonja Filan, Richard Kadri, plus secret archival material including interviews with director Tobe Hooper and Lance Kerwin, Julie Cobb, Salem's Lot Town Sign sticker, double-sided fold-out poster featuring 2 original artwork. So in the first disc we have 2 viewing models, play as miniseries in 2 parts as per the original broadcast or as an extended movie. Brand new audio commentary by film critics Bill Ackerman and Amanda Reyes. Great commentary, archival audio commentary by Hooper, alternative TV footage, commercial bumpers, and original broadcast version of The Antler's Death, original shooting script gallery. Theatrical version, brand new commentary by Chris Alexander. King of the Vampires, new interview with Stephen King biographer Douglas Winter. That is also very interesting. And the Douglas Winter interview and the Second Coming, new appreciated by author Grady and critic Grady Hendrix, is great because they really point out how the publishing world was back then and how the horror world and the novels came out and how Stephen King really changed the face of everything. And I just listened to, I did an audiobook, Kill Me. I know it's not real reading, whatever. I don't care. I just did Dead Zone for 83. I just was like, man, that was such a great book. And I loved Stephen King as I was younger, and I kind of got out of Stephen King, and now I hit that age now where I'm like back into Stephen King. So New England Nosferatu, a new interview with filmmaker Mick Garris. Of course, Mick Garris made a bunch of Stephen King adaptations. Fear Lives Here, a new featurette looking at the locations in Salem's Lot today. Surprisingly looks a lot the same, filmed in California. We Can All Be Heroes, a new interview with film critic Heather Wixson. That's kind of like a video essay, pretty solid. Co-author of Search of Darkness. A gold standard for small screen screams, a new featurette with film critic Joe Lisbeth and Trace Thurman, co-host of the podcast Horror Queens trailer Image Gallery. So that one I don't remember as much as the other ones, but it's a lot of Salem's Lot. Fantastic release. Even the house right there looks a lot like the Psycho house. So just a fantastic movie. Highly recommended if you've never seen this TV horror movie. Great vampire flick. In the early 70s, vampires were pretty abundant. You had the Hammer stuff still going on. You had like three, I think, Hammer Dracula. No, 2 Hammer Draculas and another Dracula with Christopher Lee in it as well. And Jess Franco's Count Dracula, made in 69, I think widely released in 70. But then you had Vampire Lovers. So the early 70s had tons of vampires, Count Yorga. And then we kind of move and we start changing in the mid 70s. I think there's less, more like Rape Revenge and kind of Grindhouse. But vampires were always there, but Salem's Lot definitely helped push them into the 80s big time, because I feel like this has a lot of similarities to an 80s horror film. Great stuff, Salem's Lot, highly recommended release from Arrow Video. Okay, the next one is from Arrow Video as well. Another 4K, and this is Red Sonja from 1985, directed by Richard Fleischer, who did Conan the Destroyer, Soylent Green, tons of movies. Pretty much kind of a journeyman director, but did a lot of solid stuff. He didn't always make the greatest movies, but a lot of times he made some really cool ones. So, I'm a big fan of the first Conan the Barbarian, and the sequel, Conan the Destroyer, is okay. So Richard Fleischer, the Dilo De Laurentiis produced those. They had some big hits with them, so they were going into the third one. And this isn't really a Conan movie, but the character Red Sonja, kind of a comic kind of style character too, and they got Arnold to kind of appear into it, extended cameo, even though he's one of the main kind of stars in this. And it definitely looks a lot like a Conan movie, and maybe would fit definitely after Conan the Destroyer. Let's just call it that. But Bridget Nielsen plays Red Sonja. She was in was it Rocky 4 or Beverly Hills Cop 2, and she's in a couple movies, and she's just kind of an actress that she wasn't around as long. She's gorgeous, and she had like a big chunk of the 80s, and she didn't really stick around as long as I guess a lot of people would probably like her to. But Arnold Schwarzenegger, of course, one of the great action stars of his time. He was, of course, in The Terminator and Running Man, a million movies. Do I have to go down what Arnold Schwarzenegger's accomplishments are? But he's pretty solid in this, pretty fun. And Paul Smith, and I love Paul Smith from Pieces and Crime Wave and a bunch of crazy movies. Paul Smith, big, burly kind of guy, very much in the, kind of Bluto kind of mindset there. And he played Bluto, actually, in the Popeye movie as well. So those are kind of like the big main characters in this. The main villain is pretty fun, and this is your sword and kind of sorcery movie deal. So this one opens up, and we kind of set up the idea that Red Sonja is like one of the only people who can hold this talisman, and this talisman has incredible power, enough power to destroy the world, but you can use it for your benefit as well. And the evil person wants Red Sonja to carry this for her. They can team up, and there's like some weird lesbianism thing going on there, and she scars this evil person's face, and of course this upsets her, so she murders Red Sonja's family. Red Sonja moves forward and wants to get revenge, and the world must get this talisman before the entire planet blows up. Arnold, Paul Smith, and a young Ernie Reyes Jr. is kind of like a king who had his gold stolen and his family killed. So everybody hates this evil empress kind of woman, and she has goons and stuff, one of which is one of the Nazis from the Indiana Jones Raiders of the Lost Ark. So it's kind of the setup of Red Sonja, and their kind of adventures throughout. Red Sonja has a rule that she will never sleep with any man that can't beat her in a fair fight. So Arnold and her are constantly having flirtatious kind of sword battles to exhaustion. Paul Smith is always kind of protecting Ernie Reyes, and this is a weird kind of tone, right? Janet Argan's in the credits, but I'm not even 100% sure where she is. That's the second movie. It's like, where the hell is Janet Argan in this fucking thing? I'm sure I spotted her, but it's just not like a huge role. She might even be Red Sonja's sister. It's hard to tell. I can't remember. This movie is not one of these movies where I'm like, every detail is in my mind. This was a first time watch for me, and as many times as I've seen the first Conan, and I've seen Conan the Destroyer a couple times, I never sought out Red Sonja. Being a big Arnie fan, I'm not quite sure why. A lot of people said it was really bad, and it wasn't quite as bad as what people said. I thought it was kind of a fun movie with decent sets. It definitely seemed like it was on a budget to a certain extent, but there's plenty of fight scenes, plenty of special effects, and I feel weird about the rating on this one. So you're like, it feels kind of like PG-13, but there is a little bit of nudity, so you're like, where are we doing this? When Conan the Barbarian was a hard R, Conan the Destroyer was a PG-13, and this also fits in that category as a PG-13, although they do squeeze in nudity, which was kind of odd. Ennio Morricone does the score, and as Troy Howarth and Eugenio Ercolani do the commentary, they mention it's not Morricone's best score, but a Morricone score is good. It's never bad. And I would agree with that. The score is fairly memorable. There's some good special features on here, too, that kind of talk a lot about Arnold. Like, one of the big stunt guys who's like, I worked with Arnold a bunch of times, also a director. He's like, Arnold was tough as nails, man. He got knocked off a horse, got stepped on, got up and said, bring me a different horse. He said, as tough as they come, as funny as they come, just a overall great guy. I really enjoyed spending time with him. And you don't hear many bad things about Arnold on set. A lot of people seem to have a lot of nice things to say about him. Michael Ironside always was very complimentary of him, how intelligent and stuff he was, and how much he helped him and his sister going through cancer. So Arnold has, as far as I can tell in special features, a pretty solid reputation on set, and it doesn't change here. This movie was also made with a bunch of Italian people, because Dino De Laurentiis produced, of course, and he had his studio over there. So there's tons of Italian people involved with this one, including, Arnold's stunt double was an actor. And he has a nice little interview on here talking about his career and stuff and all that stuff. Pretty long, too, 26 minutes, working with tigers and of that nature. And then we have of course, the Aqua, the brothers, the brother kind of like trapeze or acrobatic kind of, stuntmen who, Zombie, they worked on Zombie and everything of that nature. So there's an interview with the poster Zombie, of course, and he talks about working on this film, doubling for Bridget Nielsen and all that kind of stuff like that. Some fun anecdotes. But yeah, there's plenty of features on Red Sonja if you're a fan. I don't put it in the same caliber as Conan the Barbarian, of course, but it goes without saying. It's a low budget movie, and it's cheap, but it's kind of fun, and I enjoyed it for the most part. And it's family friendly to a certain extent. There's some cool monsters in here, including a hilarious giant tarantula that purrs like a cat, and a scary kind of serpent that's in the water. But as far as the special features are concerned, we have brand new commentary by critics Eugenio Orcolani and Troy Howarth, brand new audio commentary with comic book expert Dave Baxter, The Prince and Me, a newly filmed interview with Ernie Reyes Jr. talking about is like a dream come true. It was pretty wild, very forming in his life, early memories. Swords, Stunts, and Sonja, a newly filmed interview with Action Unit Supervisor Vic Armstrong. The Last of the Invincibles, a newly filmed interview with Schwarzenegger's stunt double Pietro Torzi. The Danish Girl, newly filmed interview with stuntman Octavio Delacroix. The 12 Labors of Red Sonja, newly filmed interview with assistant manager Stefano Stabaldoni. The Marvel of Primitive Technology, a newly filmed interview with excess artist Domenico Liscano, discussing the work of Emilio Ruiz del Rio. Molding Fantasies, a newly filmed interview with makeup FX assistant Adriano Carboni. Bodybuilding the Imagery, an archival unreleased interview with poster artist Renato Casario. The Man Who Raised Hollywood, archival featurette on Arnold Schwarzenegger's career featuring filmmakers Peter Hyams and Arthur Allen Settleman, producer Edward Pressman, and others. Red Sonja vs. Caldor, The Making of Misunderstanding, interview with an assistant director Michael Ferry. Trailer, Image Gallery Reversible Sleeve featuring 2 original options by Renato Casaro. Collector's Perfect Bound Booklet featuring new writings about the film by John Walsh, author of Conan the Barbarian, the official story of the film. Nino Cobretti and Barry Forshaw, double-sided fold-out poster featuring 2 original artwork options by Renato Casaro. 6 postcard-size reproduction art cards. So that was a fucking mouthful. So, yeah, anyways, if you're a big fan of Red Sonja, it looks pretty damn good, sounds pretty good in 4K, and if you want to see Arnold and complete your Conan trilogy, then check it out. I don't think you'll be disappointed. Alright guys, let's get to those 1983 movies.
I have returned.
Okay. Show me.
Where is the music now? The sound of laughter. There was never laughter.
Like?
What's what like?
Screwing a psycho.
What the fuck was that?
It's gone.
Guy blows dead dogs. Just lay it in there.
Eat shit and die, Ricky!
Eat shit and live, Bill.
Yeah, Bill, he's a little wet.
31. 32. 32. Year of a man's prime. Loved by many women. He might still learn to swim. 32. Going. Gone.
The kid was cut in half, Arnie. They had to scrape his legs up with a shovel.
Well, isn't that what you're supposed to do with shit? Scrape it up with a little shovel?
One final moment of revenge.
Wondering what's real. All of it is real.
You want to see something really scary?
You bet.
Really?
Yeah.
Get the video, Joe! Long live the new flesh!
No choice but to kill the son of a bitch.
Living one's entire life in a state of fear. It is all I have ever known. Fear.
Are you ready? Okay, go ahead. What are you doing?
All right, we're going to dive again into the All Haunts Be Ours Volume 1 box set. We're going to talk about She-Wolf, Wicklachala, or whatever the hell it is. just disregard my Polish. It's obviously not that great. Wilczyca. So, yeah. Right, here we go. And I had heard about this film. I'd never seen it. And it's kind of crazy that in the early 80s, we had, of course, the big werewolf movies of 81, the big two, Howling, American Werewolf in London. But we had some other ones, too, like, Larry Cohen's and some Wolfen, lycanthrope kind of style horror. But and we also had something called Wolf Hour, which suggests that a woman turns into kind of a wolf area. It's a very interesting psychological horror film that I find pretty good. And this movie is also paired up with another one of those called Lokis, which is about somebody turning into like a bear monster, kind of a werebear deal, or suggested, at the very least, from 1970. So it fits perfectly in that set from one from 1970. Good film, by the way. So what we have is that kind of element here. And this one is kind of told in a historical way. It's a period piece in Poland. And the director actually talks about in the special features, we had to kind of change from the Cossacks. We had to change because the producers of the movie didn't like that. So we changed it around a little bit and made sure the timing fit for the pictures, with the pictures to change, because that's a big thing of the film. There's another movie that came out in 83 that this shares a lot of similarities to, called Werewolf's Tom. I'm not going to say the actual language that it's pronounced, but that Werewolf's Tom's movie is very much in this vein, kind of like, but this one is more supernatural, involves witches and folklore, I'd say, more than this. The other one has folklore, but it's more not supernatural, historical. And this one, it takes a historical approach as well. But so a man comes back from travel, and he goes to visit his wife, and she's very sick, and she's gotten to some very much occult things, and she's on her deathbed, and she kind of just, they obviously do not get along. He still loves her very much, but she's kind of distanced himself and been involved with these occult things. And the brother or friend is like, we need to stake her. And he's like, you're insane. I won't do this. But eventually he convinces them to stake her. But something happens where maybe the stake becomes undone, and there's this countess in the local area that becomes possessed seemingly by his wife, and also shares that curse of turning into a wolf at night and whatnot. So his kind of goal is to eventually kill this wolf kind of woman, this werewolf woman. But throughout the time, he sees like witch kind of like things and creepiness. The one thing that really kind of stands out in this movie is how gorgeous it is. It feels cold and but also not drained of color. It feels real, like real winter. Feels like real historical, period settings and everything. The costumes and everything feels genuine. The woods feel cold. It feel like something like Robert Eggers watched this movie and was like, yes, I want it to look like this and feel like this and sound like this. And the end leaves it open, kind of be like a folklore kind of mystery, not mystery, but I'd say folklore legend, to be honest. But I think this was a really strong, interesting, kind of regional, obviously very much folk horror film that I got a lot out of it visually and storytelling wise. Although it's not the easiest watch, the movie's not something that's very simple that you put on and kind of zone out. And I feel like you could get a little tiny bit lost, of course, with all the like somewhat political stuff going on, but it's not necessarily political, but a lot of the character types and things of that nature, like different generals and shit, the military stuff. And they said he changed the military from the Cossacks to like an Austrian invading army and changed the date to kind of fit in with this. But it does end kind of on a violent note, which is kind of a little surprising because the movie is kind of horror oriented, of course, and it has some scary stuff, but it has a little bit less gore or violence than you would expect. And the director wasn't looking to do that. He was looking to make like kind of a historical horror piece, and I think he succeeded pretty well. There's a 10-minute interview with the director, and that's pretty much it. And it did really well, according to him, in his own country of Poland. Okay, next up is a French classique. Classic, that's what I'll say. Remember that saying? But yeah. So I believe this bad boy was probably shot on 16 millimeter, if I'm not mistaken. But it sure damn feels like a fucking. I forgot the look. I feel like maybe it's a Super 8 one here. And this is the Mad Mutilator Orgloff. Not to be confused with Orloff, or it's Orgloff, if I'm saying that correctly. And I've seen this movie before. This is Video Necronomicon. They did a couple movies. Science Craze was another one they put out. I don't know if they put another one out too, but these are the two horror films. And this movie is fucking ridiculous from 83. Early for this kind of movie. It's kind of a splatter film. The director is actually the star of the movie. He plays Orgloff himself with this weird mask. And, this is one of these movies where it's like, is there a story? Is there a plot? Hardly. So what we have here is this mass killer. Somebody's car breaks down and this mass killer kind of going around and killing people in the woods in gory detail. The dubbing ADR kind of stuff is not necessarily very good. Sometimes you don't really hear the characters. It cuts in, kind of poor on that aspect, and there's kind of a weak kind of like soundtrack going over the entire thing. This is definitely a splatter movie, and I think people will be into it for the splatter and earliness. If you're like, man, I really thought Andros Schnosh was really ahead of the curve, then you should watch Ogroff, and you'll see where a lot of this kind of stuff came from, right? This cheap backwoods splatter kind of nonsense. But the whole movie kind of involves Ogroff going around killing people for like the first half of the film, and then we kind of have like an info dump where like he was a war guy and he got paralyzed and he ate a bunch of people and he's a and it goes this huge big info dump. You're like, okay, we got backstory in Ogroff, so we don't have to watch we just know what the sequel is. And then like halfway through the movie, it turns into a killing spree where it's like, you know what this movie needs? Fucking zombies. We're just gonna have zombies come out of everywhere. So I don't know if I missed something, because I've seen this a couple times, but I was like, it is what it is. So zombies come out of nowhere, and then the last half of the movie is just zombies attacking people, including Ogroff, who goes at him. And then on top of that, we're like, you know what? This sounds a lot like Orloff, so let's just bring in Howard Vernon himself. I don't know how the fuck they got Howard Vernon to be in this, but then again, you think of some of the Jess Franco stuff that Howard Vernon's in, and why wouldn't he be in Orloff? So he pops up and he's like, I'm a vampire. I think he's a vampire. Who the fuck knows? But it's weird and it's goofy, and Howard Vernon in your cheap $10 movie, it's not like he's too good to be in this. Like I said, some of the Franco stuff he was in was dirt cheap as well. But overall, Orloff is completely bizarre, completely weird. Like there's that movie The Bleeder from '83 as well, which is the Scandinavian SOV slasher. I think Orloff's better than that. I think it's got funner effects, more fun effects, and more ridiculousness. But it also has that problem I have where it's just like, it's so crazy batshit, and some people are like, I love it because it makes no sense and to keep throwing everything in. Sometimes for that, I'm just like so discombobulated. We're like, I'm out, guys. Like, you lost me somewhere. I barely care, but I don't hate this movie. It's fun enough. It's goofy enough. And look out for Zombie Orloff. They should make a sequel right now. But this is out of print, unfortunately. I think I have two versions of this of DVD, not of this release, but I have two. I have this movie twice on two different DVDs for some reason because I'm a sadist. But this I could see like Vinegar Syndrome or Saturn's Core or Bleeding Skull putting out Orloff. It's definitely something they would put out for sure. All right, the last one from 1983 is an oddity, and this is Neurosis, Revenge in the House of Usher. And this is not technically an 83 movie, but we're going to talk about it here anyways, because some of the footage in here is probably from the mid-80s. So this is weird. This is a Eurocine, so that should say a lot of what this is. Suggests Franco. This is a Eurocine. Redemption Films put this bad boy out. Hey, speak of the devil, Howard Vernon, of course. So, okay, boy, oh boy, how am I going to explain this? Tim Lucas does a fantastic fucking job explaining this in the commentary, so listen to that. But so basically what happens is, I think in 81, 82, he made Revenge of the House of Usher, just Franco, and it had Howard Vernon in it. And this movie really didn't get a wide release or anything of that nature. I don't think it did very well, so we recut it, add some new scenes in there of murders, and they put that out, and it played in a film festival, Crimes of the Usher, and then that really didn't get a wide release. Either way, I didn't have time to discover or try to look for it because I'd watched this today, and then I was listening to commentaries like, oh shit, this is like multiple versions of this fucking movie, which is pretty on point with just Franco, and I'm not sure if these were widely released anywhere. So I'm like, okay. And then this version is actually some of the clips from those other two movies, the first movie, and that we have cuts in and flashbacks to the awful Dr. Orloff from 61, 62, I can't remember that one, but the series which starred Howard Vernon that went on to make like 5 or 6 sequels. So this is like partially a sequel to Orloff. Who the fuck knows? It has flashbacks from Orloff, but he's not really Orloff. But Morbo's in here as well, his kind of henchman with the one messed up eye. So I'm like, or the fake eyes. I'm like, what is going on here? So we have all this oddity, and that's the new stuff shot for this. Not even by Jess Franco, the Morbo stuff with the corpse in here, which is played by his daughter, who's kind of like played by Francois Blanchard from Living Dead Girl. She's in here. So you're like, that stuff's new. So what we have, it's really odd, to be honest. So the opening of the movie has Antonio Mayans, who's a Franco regular, showing up, and his name is like, in the French version, is Alan Harker. So I'm like, what is this, a Dracula riff? There's also a Dr. Stewart, of course, from Dracula. So I'm like, this is weird as shit. So showing up the House of Usher, of course, Edgar Allan Poe, and Howard Vernon plays Usher, and he's completely mad, and he's hallucinating and all sorts of shit. And that starts to happen to Antonio Mayans as well. And there's women in the cellar, Morbo's in the cellar, people are being drained of blood, and he tells this huge elaborate 15-minute flashback, which is just shit from Dr. Orloff, the black and white and everything of that nature. So you're like, what the fuck? So we're having all these weird flashbacks from different movies. Eurocine comes in and shoots some other stuff and patches this together and makes a real oddball movie. But it kind of works because the whole idea is that everybody's hallucinating in this castle and no one can really focus on what the hell is actually happening. It's all nightmares. And I think that Howard Vernon's pretty solid. And I preferred the French dub because I was watching this in English, which Howard Vernon dubbed his own voice in English as well, according to Lucas on the commentary, and it sounded so bad to me, and it's probably Mayan's voice was just so bad dubbed, whatever it was. Lino Romay is also in here, another, obviously, Franco muse and staple in the Franco movies. It's not as sexually explicit as a lot of other Franco movies, but there is some of that stuff in here. It's not incredibly gory either. It's kind of dull, but really bizarre and weird, and I did enjoy it to a certain extent. You got a castle in here. The quality's not really great. I feel like there's probably a lot of issues with the elements on this one. Obviously, it's cut from 3 different fucking things, 4 different things, whatever the hell it's cut from. But overall, it's an odd movie, and I don't think it really counts as one of the Orloff movies, and I don't think it really counts as a Poe adaptation or a Dracula adaptation. But it's funny because the Orloff movies feel like Eyes Without a Face anyways, right? That idea that he's trying to keep his daughter alive in Orloff by bringing people to him. That's a very classic Eyes Without a Face story, right? He's killing women to save his daughter's face, and then the Orloff is a rip of that kind of. And then this whole ordeal with Orloff in these movies, and then there's one point where he mentions like Bad Hands or something. I was like, what is this going to be, Orlok ripoff too? So there's just all sorts of shit going on here, which Orloff I think was the name inspired from Orlok. Craziness, Franco obviously takes inspiration from plenty of movies, but it's like a rehash in his brain of what the hell he remembers from them. Overall, I enjoyed Neurosis. I don't think it's Franco's best, most certainly, but we're talking about 1983 Jess Franco here. They got 85 on this one. This is probably when this version was released, but since we don't have the other versions, Neurosis is going to sit in the 1983 world as Revenge of the House of Usher. If I can find the other version, I will watch that as well, but I probably will not rewatch this for 85. Maybe we'll mention it in the video, but overall, Franco was a busy man in 83. I think Alone Against Terror is another one he did, Diamonds in the Kilimanjaro, which I absolutely fucking hate, but I'm going to rewatch anyways, and he had a couple other ones too that he had his hands in. I think he had like 8 movies. It's like 15 movies or something I counted from 83. Not all horror films, of course, but hey, God bless Jess Franco. Okay, the Patreon pick, I believe, is a Tyler Tadeo, and this is Mikey and Nicky. And I had never seen this movie, and this is directed by Elaine May, who is big into improv kind of scene, which makes a lot of sense because it got Cassavetes in here, and Cassavetes was an actor, Rosemary's Baby, The Dirty Dozen, but he also was a director. And he directed a lot of films, and a lot of his acting was very naturalistic. I believe he did A Woman Under the Influence, which is a fantastic movie with Peter Falk. I know Falk and him had a connection and did a lot of movies together and stuff of that nature. And that movie feels very natural, very improv. And this one is as well. Like, this movie reminded me a lot of The Friends of Eddie Coyle, just in the plot and everything of that nature. Cassavetes, he's a great actor. I've always loved him as Victor Franco from Dirty Dozen. Was my favorite character growing up in that. Him and Maggot, because I'm a crazy Maggot's just, and Pinkley. I just love the Dirty Dozen, but Victor Franco was fun. And he is just fucking insane in this movie. Peter Falk, also Columbo, great actor. The Brinks Job, and again, Woman Under the Influence. Every time I see Peter Falk, I'm happy. He's just a great actor, and he's been so much. Everybody looks at him as Columbo, as this good-natured kind of guy, but he can play a lot of different roles from what I've seen, and he plays that kind of odd character here. And this, again, I would say it's just to be more like a bigger name, I guess, would be like, it comes from the school of Martin Scorsese when it comes to editing, right? You're worried about the performance. You're not necessarily worried about the continuity, because they'll do a thing and then you'll look over and it's like, oh, his face wasn't there, it changed, or his angle wasn't there, his hand wasn't there. But they're more concerned about the performance, right? They're looking into that more so than they are looking into other things. And the performances are top notch. And this is like a crazy night movie, like one crazy night movie, and it's nerve-wracking. It's I guess like, the past equivalent to like an Uncut Gems, where you're just watching these characters, mostly Cassavetes, just completely get on your nerves. So what happens is Cassavetes calls Peter Falk, and he's like, I need help, and he gets him to show up to this hotel room in a really backwards fucking way because he's worried about somebody seeing him. And he gets up there and he won't let him in, so Falk has to bang on the fucking door. And it turns out that Cassavetes is worried that somebody's out to kill him, that he stole some money, and he says he didn't do it, but he's really worried and nervous. And as it progresses, you start to like get kind of Cassavetes' paranoia. You're like, is Falk actually out to get him because he keeps looking at the clock? He's got to call his wife, all sorts of weird shit like that. And then and you're like, man, I just feel worried for Cassavetes. But then the movie kind of switched for me, where there's a certain point where Cassavetes becomes so goddamn annoying and also just so ungrateful, and just you kind of realize that the true kind of nature of Cassavetes to a certain extent when him and Falk get in a fight, and you're like, oh wow, I kind of am siding with Peter Falk. And there's this point where these characters have just a lot of background and a lot of history, and it all starts to kind of come out a little bit at a time. But just two tremendous performances, these two actors just kind of running to different locations and changing their mind at the last minute while Peter Falk is scrambling to get to the area and change the course of the action. But it ends in your classic 70s kind of depressing, kind of classic, crime film. It definitely has that kind of Friends of Eddie Coyle vibe, if anybody's seen that. That's more, I guess, traditional in its set of like editing and acting and cinematography of that. This is more kind of this reminded me of like what is it, Mike Lee's what is that fucking movie with just a tremendous movie, why am I forgetting that movie, Mike Lee Naked. It kind of had that vibe, where that character, right? And also, earlier, Cutter's Way, John Hurd reminded me a lot of the lead character, the main character in Naked, right? These characters that just, they say fucked up shit to you. They get on your last nerve, and they read you, and they tell you how the world is, and you don't want to fucking hear it all the time. And I feel like in a way that Cassavetes kind of has that Naked vibe too, because just a little bit, this movie's kind of frantic energy reminds me of that whole crazy night running around the streets throughout. But anyways, I thought this was a great film. I love this film. I don't know how many times I'll watch this film, but all the acting is tremendous from everybody involved. And just watching Cassavetes be a manipulating master is pretty great stuff. Oh, I gotta mention Ned Beatty in here too. Ned Beatty is fantastic in this movie. He's so like, I couldn't park anywhere. He's just such a goon, but at the same time he's fantastic. A subtle performance, but the right performance for this movie. Excellent movie. Mikey and Nicky, glad somebody recommended it. Criterion put it out for a good reason. I'll pick it up if they have a sale. I definitely wouldn't mind having it. Like I said, though, I would dive into the features and of that nature. Elaine May directed more movies. She acted in more movies. But coming from that improv background, she's just like, yeah, definitely from that school for sure, and the filmmaking and everything like that. But great stuff. All right, let's do these questions, comments, and concerns. We have Smudge 7057. Correction to your correction. There are no other Sarsgaard actors. A family of Swedish actors, Stellar and his sons Bill, Alexander, and Gustav, are named Skarsgård, not Sarsgaard. Ooh, you fool. You absolute fool, Dave. Thank you. Brendan Timmons. Maybe you showed it off in an update and I've forgotten, but did you happen to pick up the Tone Pelser set from Bleeding Skull? I did. Might just be my favorite release from them yet. Been watching through it, and his work is way up your alley. He's like a mix of John Roland and Brian Poland. Tons of insane gore, great camera work, and dark, doomed atmosphere. The set is all gems, and I highly recommend it. Thank you very much. Nick from Flanders. The birthday intrigues me to no end. I'll be sure to check it out. A pity that the film didn't get a wider release back then. Eventually, equally sad as the way Corey Feldman's career went Holly weird. Can eat peeps up and shit them out. Chopping malls always seem like a fun flick to me, and who can say no to Barbara Crampton? Questions. Did you have a favorite mall growing up, and did you ever sneak in there all night? Did not sneak in there all night. There's two malls. There's a handful of malls growing up, but there's two that we visited frequently. We would visit Northtown Mall, which was close to us, and they had the Dollar Theater and the Red Baron Arcade. I probably appreciated that one the most because the Dollar Theater and the Red Baron Arcade, and I've been there a million times. Closed now, and then there was Franklin Park, which is relatively close to me now, but we used to go there occasionally too for movies and whatnot. It was fun. It was fun. I still have affinity for that mall. And in Columbus, there was this giant mall that when we were in Columbus visiting my family around Christmas that we'd go, and it was like 3 stories. It was amazing. That's closed down as well. What was your best Barbara Crampton horror performance according to you? Reanimator. She's fantastic in that movie. You probably heard that Sinners won an award. She's also great in From Beyond. You probably heard that Sinners won an award. I quite liked the film, but do you feel the criticism leveled against it is namely that it borrowed the plot from Mr. Tarantino's From Dusk Till Dawn is valid? Your show was and always will be a delight, sir. Till next time, God willing. I mean, yeah, it has some similarities from Dusk Till Dawn, but it's not like From Dusk Till Dawn's the most original movie ever made. It's a fucking vampire movie. I mean, it's a siege movie. It's Night of the Living Dead with vampires in a bar with the village people, kind of crazy array of characters. I love From Dusk Till Dawn, and hitting on movies for not being original is just like, at this point, you're like, you could almost tear apart 95% of movies for not being original. I thought Sinners was fantastic, and I try not to read everybody's complaints about movies I like, because it's just one of the ones that got the Oscar nomination, and I'm just tired of seeing the same fucking 3 or 4 posts. It's overrated. I don't care. I don't give a shit. You sound like a broken record. Everybody said it. Everybody and their brother said the same fucking 3 goddamn things about the movie. You like it or don't, who gives a shit at this point? Say something different or don't say anything at all. But hell, I'm probably saying the same shit everybody else is saying on this. But at least I'm covering stuff like frickin' Neurosis by Jess Franco and not the movies that everybody else is covering. I cover them too, but hey. I'm just trying to say I'm better than everybody else in a different way. I'm just kidding, but that's what it sounded like. Okay, Audio Love, 1976. Hey man, Sarsgaard isn't a Sarsgaard brother. The name is closer to understanding the confusion, but he's actually Megan Gyllenhaal's husband, and is probably best known as the main antagonist from Boys Don't Cry. That accounts for why he's the worst of the Sarsgaard. And if you're old, I'm ancient. He's like, I did mention the correction on the top, but it is fine that you guys are correcting me. Nothing wrong with that. Frank's Comic Castle. I got the 88 Films edition of Fall of New York. Only special features an interview with Martino. I do like the movie. It's a lot of fun. I agree. Katum, you cracked me up with your old man impression during the Bride review. DVD 266. Oh my, haha. I was cracking up with the dirty work comments in your Bride review. Thanks, Mrparka, with your honest review. I mean, people should check it out. A lot of people love it. It's just not for me. Way up, dude. Mrparka rules. Thank you. Necrops, 2 out of 4 is very generous. 0 out of 10 is more accurate. He's talking about the Bride. The Bride, everything that is not for me rolled into one movie. Bonnie and Clyde with feminism, costumes from Frankenstein, no thanks. Hard pass. I'm 100% with you. I hated everything about the Bride. I hate all these new Frankenstein shit. LOL, sorry. The one thing I do want to mention is I don't hate The Bride for its content. I just don't think it gets its message across, and I think it's just sloppy filmmaking in general. I don't hate movies for content typically. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna, unless a movie came out and was like, I would probably think it's a parody if it came out and was like, everybody needs to kill everybody. You know what I mean? Like, I just can't. It's a movie. Like, I'm not going to hate it for its content necessarily. And, like, I'm not going to be like, oh, it's a feminist movie. I hate it. That's ridiculous. I would never do that. There's plenty of fucking fantastic feminist movies or whatever. But, The Bride, to me, was just a movie I did not care for. It's not for me. I just didn't like it. It was sloppy and it was loud and none of it came together, and it became across as incoherent, messy, and tried to have too many subplots that never came together. And I didn't think the acting was particularly great either, and I don't like how the characters portrayed. And the Broken and Bleeding, I was literally just looking at the movie on Diabolic to buy when you were talking about The Birthday. Then I noticed it also in the new box set of his that I pre-ordered. Love Takashi, and we need Visitor Q on Blu-ray at least. It has an overseas release. I might import it. The Crops goes, let's go Mrparka, content drop, life is worth living again. Thank you. Second, no, I didn't get the first comment, I am slipping. You'll be alright. I know you'll be alright. What the Flick? Have you seen Voodoo starring Corey Feldman? I think it's awesome, but apparently I'm the only one. I also watched the trailer for The Bride and I knew I wouldn't like it. Don't think I'm going to check it out anytime soon. I've seen reviews of people defending The Bride basically saying, hey, it's weird, check it out, but you just because it's weird doesn't make it interesting or good. I fucking hate when people talk shit about a movie without watching it like people did for The Crow 2024, but I'm not trying to talk shit about The Bride. I'm just saying it doesn't look like it would be up my alley, so I can't form an opinion. Beyond Sour Ground, your old man impersonation was hilarious. I'm also sold on The Bride just because of how bad it sounds. I'm almost sold on The Bride. Your old man impersonation was okay. The Bride, how bad it sounds. This could give a whole new segment for the show where you review movies you vehemently dislike, playing the snobby film critic known as Old Man Parka. I hate this. It's stupid. Yeah, I could just do that. Ken Coakley. I saw Sudden Impact during its opening weekend in '83. It was my second Dirty Harry movie that I saw theatrically. I saw Magnum Force at Drive-In at 76 on a double bill with All the President's Men, which bored me. So Magnum Force, in my opinion, was better. It became my favorite film in the series. Sudden Impact was a close second because before the movie's release, we talked about the TV ads in school because that was the first time we saw Clint Eastwood say, "Go ahead, make my day." So that excited us. Then I saw the movie in the beginning when the guy got shot in the nuts. I cringed. All the boys in school reacted the same way. The criminals deserved it, but it was harsh. It wasn't the first Dirty Harry movie and when a criminal got shot in the groin. It also happened at the beginning of The Enforcer. I haven't seen Chopping Mall in some time. I had the Blu-ray, which I showed to my best friend who had a crush on Tony O'Dell when he was in The Karate Kid on the TV series Head of the Class. I liked the movie because it was action-packed and because of Paul Bartel and Mary Warnoff as Dick Miller, as well as Dick Miller. I also have a question. Do you think that horror films are getting more love these days with Sinners and Frankenstein getting major nominations? I think they're getting more respect, but I think that there always was diehard horror fans like us, and I think there always will be. And I'm glad that horror movies are getting the reception they deserve. And I think it's because they make money. Horror movies always get attention. They always get money. And maybe Hollywood's, finally just like, well, we gotta sell out even more and just, praise the horror movies, because that's what's been keeping us fucking alive is genre movies forever. And it's about time, though, honestly. I love that horror movies are getting love. Even if I don't care about the Oscars or watch the Oscars, the better horror movies do, the more they make, there's more chance that there'll be some gems that I love in there. And then we have Jason Bovey. Really enjoyed your review of Beowulf. When I saw it in theater, I enjoyed it and the 3D so much I turned around and saw it again the following week. I had no idea you were in 9 to 10. I had no idea you were in the fantasy flicks of the 80s. I also loved them and saw Sword and Sorcerer and Conan in the theater back in the day. Awesome. See, I was having trouble reading this page because look what I fucking printed. It's all like double things. So I'm like, not trying to be rude in your comments. It was just a mess. And I was like, I gotta concentrate, guys. But quick movie for the update, and it is Ilsa, the Tigress of Siberia on 4K from Kino, the third Ilsa movie, and we got one more coming, the unofficial Ilsa Wicked Warden I have on pre-order. So it's a fucking weird time to be alive when you got the Ilsa movies on 4K. Awesome. But we're out of here, guys.